Okay, I'm going to talk about the We Should Think Like Designers section. So I'm going to date myself. When I was a graduate student, and I was taking my video games and learning classes, so I was at Arizona State doing this. So James Paul G, who pops up all over the place, was a visiting faculty member there at the time. And then his research partner, Elizabeth Hayes, who became Elizabeth Hayes G, was also a researcher there. And so I took classes from both of them in these ideas. And so both of them required that we play a game in class. Like, you have to experience all of this to really apply the theories on a regular basis. And so this idea of we should think like a designer like really stuck out to me. And so the game I ended up playing, because it was fairly new to the market, was the game Little Big Planet. That's where I'm dating myself, because I know that it is an older game at this point. So it's good. We're good. When Little Big Planet came out, because y'all were probably little, if you were even born yet, when it came out, it was one of the first games where you play through it, because it is a side scroller of sorts, and you collect materials, and then once you've hit a certain point in the leveling up, you get this new game component open to you where you can use these materials that you've collected throughout your gameplay to create your own levels, and then you can share your own levels. Prior to Little Big Planet, there was some sharing of user created levels, but for the most part, platformers, so like PlayStation and Xbox, they really did everything they could to shut that down as much as they possibly could, so that players continued to buy the discs. They wanted people to buy the game, like the physical copy of the game that you had to insert into your console in order for it to play. So user-generated levels and user-generated content were very new, and they kind of developed, interestingly enough, alongside user-generated content on social media. Really prior to this like 2008 era, companies didn't think that they could profit off of the ingenuity and creativity of everyday people. And then everyday people were like, let me give you all of that for free. And then we did. So at the time when Little Big Planet came out, I got off on a huge tangent there, sorry. At the time that Little Big Planet came out, it was one of the first games to really center user-generated level creation. And a lot of game critics were like, that's it. The video game industry is over. It's done, because user-generated levels. It's never gonna be the same again because it's dying. They were right on half of that, right? Like, it was never the same again, but it didn't die, like, at all. It didn't even come close to dying. And that's where this idea that we should think like designers is really, really interesting and fascinating to me. The game industry saw it from a capitalistic lens. I want to sell, sell, sell. And they didn't realize like the value, or where they could find value in users playing more and users sharing more, and the communities that it created surrounding that. And then now, like, the YouTube channel is devoted to just that. My son watches this Australian game player who then streams some of his play, and he'll go through and play Mario Maker user created levels. Those videos are phenomenal, because there are some awesome Mario Maker levels out there, and there are some really, really terrible ones that are just like, they throw everything at you, right? And so trying to get through them is funny, pleasurable, but not fun. So we're back to the play video from earlier, right? So when we're talking about, when Zimmerman's talking about we should think like designers, I want to really return us here to the discussion about ludology. So it was a couple of videos ago where, ludology is the study of games, it's the study of playing, but it's also the study of these two things situated in culture. When we start talking, we should think like designers. We have an amazing art and design program here. And there are all sorts of ways that design thinking is a thing. But also, because this is an English class and we're focused specifically on writing, I want to add in the cultural component. It's not just that we should think like designers. We need to think like designers who are influenced by culture and all of these big ideas that are going on around us, and how they can influence like these claims that we're making. Now we're really getting to argument structure and the connection between games and writing, right? Okay, so Little Big Planet, to a lot of game critics, was like the end of the video game industry. And that's not what happened, because players started thinking like designers, and then hopefully, extended some of that into their real life. And now we have a whole new internet, like the internet I'm not saying that Little Big Planet is the one that revolutionized this. A whole lot was going on at the same time that happened. And we've seen a couple different iterations of changes, but I trace it back to Little Big Planet because it was a game that I played at the time and I was reading all of this, and so we're going to trace it back to Little Big Planet for our purposes. So what I want you to think through, and the questions I want you to answer for this section: why, number one, why do you think critics were convinced the player-created levels would lead to the demise of the game industry? Why were they so convinced? Like, that was it. Video games were dying. Why? And number two, considering everything that's discussed in this manifesto, so everything discussed by Zimmerman, especially the human cultural connections of games, why didn't player-created levels lead to the demise of industry? Like, bring in the cultural piece. I want to hear what connections you are hearing and what connections you are making to that cultural component of ludology for the second part of the question. So one, why did critics think that was the end of the game industry? Two, given all of these other ideas that we've talked about in this chapter so far, why didn't player level creation lead to the demise of the video game industry? Really focus on the cultural component there.